Hello once again, my fellow RC enthusiasts, RC nuts, quad builders. This is a quick little update. I messed up my hand pretty bad. I'll put a sort of a blurred out image because what happened to my hand was actually pretty graphic. They always tell you to take off your blades whenever you are plugging it into beta flight, clean flight, any of that stuff, and testing the motors. Well, my computer had a bit of a lag to it, and in the past I had had no problems testing the motors, but the number one motor, when I was testing it, it went to full throttle, and I was sitting like this on my bed, Indian style, like this, of course, and I didn't have the battery straps on. I had a battery plugged in from the back, and I turned the motor up just to make sure everything was working because I had rematched the motors, and the number one motor turned on and it came over and hit my hand. So right now about 1/8 of an inch of skin was taken off my ring finger right up here. So on my middle finger it was right here, and on this finger my knuckle was hit pretty hard. But I'll be going over a little more in depth of this. A few people that watch my videos and people that are getting new to the hobby, a local guy that I've actually met, he's a great guy, really loves RC, everything RC, but he saw my earlier videos where I was actually doing building using my GoPro and my head mount. It looks goofy as hell, and I stopped doing this after I did the things to my funny car. So I would put it on like this, and then I would connect it to my phone and point it down, and then use some type of flashlight. I got this one now that puts out quite a bit of light. And of course I have my regular flashlights, but what I will be building today, it's almost done, so I'm just going to show the last part. It's a gremlin. Basically you take all the parts of a baby hawk. I had a baby hawk, as you can see right here, baby hawk, Emax baby hawk. I took everything apart and I moved everything to this. This is the flight test gremlin chassis. I would have had it fixed, but I ordered new motors because what was to happen with those other motors? I'm having to remember. Oh yeah, I took the prop guards off, and now that I remember from the Phantom, when I first got into quads, if you remove the prop guards, you can't use the same screws because it would go up into the windings. Well, it ended up cutting a lot of the windings, so I ordered another set of motors. Well, that set of motors had one bad motor in it, but this is basically the look of it that it's going to have. It's going to be very similar to my Martian. This is basically this is the Alex Zavada frame. It's a 2mm bottom plate and a 1.5mm top plate. I'm using all the stock parts, except I also reverse polarized connected a ESC, so I fried that. I have 3 new ESCs coming today, but I will actually be going back to what I originally started with, and I also have some Emax 1106 motors coming that I'm going to put on this, and these motors are going to go on a Lady Owl that I'm building for my fiance, because she wants to, she's always liked the quads, but then when I got to the surface, she never really liked the surface. it's boring to her. It's like driving a car, is what she said. So, okay, I'll get your quad. The drifter. I am done with it except for just installing a servo. This is not the electronics I'm going to be using 100%. When I'm done, it's going to have a Toro 120 amp ESC and I think it's a Hobbywing V10 12.5 turn motor, censored. But for now, this is just to get things running. I'm going to have to replace my, I really hate to say it, but my, where is it? It may be tossed by now. My Racer's Edge 2S battery. I don't know if it's still alive, but I have to look real quick. It's up under everything. It has puffed, but drift cars don't take a lot of power because all it's doing is spinning the tires. So, plug it into the voltage checker real quick, just see if it's keeping a charge. Because it wasn't keeping a charge. What, 8.18? Yeah, it's keeping a charge. It's puffed a little, so it'll work until I get a new one. But this was my very first. This was my very first 5,000 milliamp 2S LiPo. This is my very first LiPo. I got this almost 4 years ago now when I had my Hellion Dominus. After I got my Hellion Dominus, I started getting other RC vehicles. And then once I got my X-Max, I started actually doing videos. And that's how I got to where I am now. Over 40 vehicles, getting back into quads because that's where I started. But I started with a NACE 32 board. Just the software, the hardware, everything has, within just 3.5, 4 years, has grown exponentially. Like this right here, what I'm using on this is a Femto F3, I think it's a Speed Racer F3 flight controller. And it's so tiny. It's the flight controller, it's the PDB, it's everything in one. All I have to do is add ESCs and motors and a camera. And also a receiver. And I've said this in other videos, I'm using the Longbow DSMX receiver. It's very small. It's the size of a thumbnail. The reason it's so big right here is because I actually have it in some shrink wrap and I have some tape on the back, which I can remove that just to give a little bit of a better idea of how small this thing is. And it's great for these micro quads if you're using Spectrum, which that's what I use. I like Spectrum. I've always ran Spectrum, but for my fiance I have a Turney Evolution ordered. It's more of a Xbox style. It's better for her hands. But I have that ordered, but I'm thinking about canceling that order and getting the Free Sky Tyrannus X7 because I've actually held one of those compared to it's wider, but from front to back it's shallower. So her small hands will be able to wrap around. But later on today I have one ESC to finish, which is the number 2 motor, ESC, and then solder on the motor, and then I have to resolder this motor. I have to wrap around the wires around the ESC because the wires are, I believe, 50 millimeters long. And then wire up the camera, which is the stock Baby Hawk camera for now. Because right now I'm learning line of sight. That's how I learned initially. I didn't have 3.5, 4 years ago, we didn't have all this Fat Shark, all these goggles. I mean, I have goggles now. They're not the best, but they work, and they have a DVR built into them. They're the Red Paws EV800 Pros. It's not true diversity. It uses 2 antennas, but these are my, oh crap, yeah. These are my goggles. They work. That's all that matters to me. They get good reception. I'm using the Pagoda 2. Which I watched Joshua. I watch a lot of Joshua Bardwell's because they know he's known as the FPV know-it-all, and he really is. If you ever need anything, if you're ever having a problem with your quad, like at one arm, or need to remap your motors because you've turned your ESC and your all-in-one ESC, your flight controller and all that. He'll go through all that. He even does a live stream Q&As, and they last for like 2 hours. The soldering iron I use is a UE 937. Digital. I'm not sure how many watts it is. I think it's about 60 watts. But I have a bunch of different tips for it, which really helps. For large wires like 14, 12 gauge, I have large tips. And for the small little 22 gauge wires, 22 gauge, 24 gauge, I have very small tips. The reason you use different size tips is when you're soldering wires, the wires are sucking a lot of heat from the tips, so it's a lot harder to get that solder joint soldered because the wire is sucking up a lot of heat. You want to get in and out as fast as possible. I usually solder around 400 to 420 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit. I don't remember the conversion ratio. But by the time I'm done, it will look strikingly similar to my Martian II, which is essentially an Alien 2. It's just a knockoff, and I apologize to anyone. I actually do have Rotor Riot Hype Train motors on it. I love those motors. Extreme amount of punch, very powerful. And I also have some Emax 2600 kV RS 2205 red bottoms that I'll be building probably a 4-inch race quad. And I'm going to keep it as light as possible because I would like to get into racing, and I also want to get into FPV. And I only live less than 100 miles from Atlanta, and everybody knows that that's where Mr. Steele is. That's where basically a lot of the best FPV pilots in America live, on the East Coast. So that's where I'm at. I'm at exit 146 on I-75. I'm like a mile from the exit. And all I have to do is hop on 75, go up about 95 miles, and I'm in Atlanta. But today, I will be focusing on this. I'm waiting for the products to be delivered right now. The mail truck is here. But I let the man do his thing. I let him do his job. I don't go over there and bother him, say, hey, sir, can you give me my package? Let him finish what he's doing, go over while he's still there, get my package, because in the past, I would let him leave and then go get my package. Well, there has been times in the past where he actually accidentally put it in one of the side. Eventually, I got my package, and there was one time I needed glow plugs for my Ducati 999R Nitro bike, but they were delivered to a different mailbox, so I didn't get my glow plugs. I contacted everybody I could, and the guy said I put them in the right place. No, you didn't. But that's it for that. Again, I got props, motors. I got another set of motors, so I'll have extra motors. Amazon, that's one thing I will say. I'm going to be going back through all my videos and adding links to everything I bought, everything I used through Amazon. I use Amazon almost exclusively, except for certain things. I love Amazon Prime. 2-day shipping for free. It's only $9.99 a month or $99 for a year. So, I mean, you can't really beat that. That's a really good price for 2-day shipping for the entire year. If they're late, they pay you back. They give you a little bit of money. And when I had this entire problem with my hand, it fried my #1 motor. They sent me a replacement motor plus an extra motor. And they also, because even though it was my fault, they ended up giving me $100 on a gift card. So I was able to get a DSMX dongle for my computer so I can practice on the simulator. So here's another Hype Train motor. I love these motors. I don't know why. I'm not a big fan of Mr. Steele. He's a great pilot, but from what I've heard from other people, and seeing that I don't live that far from Atlanta, and there's actually a pretty good FPV scene around here, quad scene. He's not the nicest guy. If you actually meet him, that's what I've been told. I don't know for sure until I actually meet him myself. So you never know. Rumors. But yeah, that's basically what I'm going to be. I will be adding these Baby Hawk. I basically took the Baby Hawk prop guards and cut them down so they're individual. So my fiance can fly this until I get the Lady Owl. I'll be getting my money from my YouTube videos. And that's the Lady Owl frame is $55. I already have, I have another Femto F3 flight controller coming. I have extra ESCs. I'll have extra motors. But seeing that I'm buying the RS1106 motors for this, I just put these motors on that. And I actually already have the props, which are the, what were these again? Gym Fan 2540 props. Personally, I like the Baby Hawk 2345 props. There's simply more surface area than these little dinky props. So personally, I like these, and also these fit on here without having to have an adapter, because the mounting holes for these screws are like 4 millimeters compared to 8 millimeters. Yeah, they're for the actual Baby Hawk motors. You have to use these, and RJX Hobbies also makes some props for it if you want in different colors. So I'll be going back to wearing my GoPro, actually building, and showing everybody exactly what I'm doing. The one thing I will go ahead and say is I do have a neurological problem. I tend to shake a little, and these will come off. So I will go ahead and warn you. That's what my ring finger looks like right now. My pointer finger not nearly as bad. I'm keeping it moist with Neosporin. But as for now, that's basically it. So like usual, thanks for watching. Keep watching, and we'll get the gremlin, basically the gremlin hawk flying, and see how fun that is. I'm almost positive it's going to be better than the actual Baby Hawk, because it's going to have, I'm hoping it's going to have the flight characteristics of my Martian II, because it's the same, it's just a half-size version of the Martian II, the Alien II. It's the exact same thing, just sized down. So we'll see. I still have this ESC and motor hooked up. It's fine. I just need to take the tape off and put heat shrink on it. So yeah, like usual, thanks for watching.